The aesthetics of sex. Sexuality and aesthetics go hand in hand. This is because in order for something to be attractive, it needs a certain level of appeal or beauty. Aesthetics are the foundation behind most advertisements due to the goal of an ad being to sell a product to you. The best way being to make the product appealing for the audience. To further understand the relationship between sex advertisement and aestheticism, we first need to understand what exactly aestheticism is. Paul F. Kisak wrote, "Aesthetics in the world of art and photography refers to the principles of nature and appreciation of beauty." The Oxford Dictionary states aesthetics as a set of principles concerned with the nature and appreciation of beauty. Cambridge Dictionaries defines it as the formal study of art, especially in relation to the idea of beauty. All of these definitions correlate aesthetics with beauty. However, what makes something beautiful? Do we really have control over what we perceive as beautiful, or is something else at play? One theory behind what humans perceive as aesthetic or beautiful is Darwinism. Dennis Dutton says, "Taste for both natural beauty and for the arts travel across cultures with great ease." How can we explain this universality? The best answer lies in trying to construct a Darwinian evolutionary history of our artistic and aesthetic tastes, essentially meaning that our standards of beauty have grown, adapted, and changed throughout our evolutionary history, which means there is a very primal foundation of beauty ingrained in us already. However, a more post-structural theory contrasts that in believing that our beauty standards are simply the culmination of experiences and mainstream ideologies that create the foundation for our personalized aesthetic appeal. Kendall Walton, the president of the American Society for Aesthetics, stated, "Aesthetics is a strange field, in some ways a confused one. Yet among the issues it is charged with treating are some of the most fascinating and profound ones that philosophy has to offer. I take aesthetics to be largely a branch of philosophy." Given these theories on beauty, why is sex appeal one of the largest means of advertisement used by advertisers to appeal to an audience or catch one's eye? Magda Kay states, "The earliest known use of sex in advertising dates back to 1871, when Pearl Tobacco featured a naked maiden on the package cover." A study was conducted by Lawrence Soley and Gary Gersbad. It presented a content analysis of sexual portrayals in magazine advertisements during 1964 and 1984. The results show that the percentage of ads with sexual content did not increase over the 20-year period, but that the types of sexual portrayals did. Sexual illustrations became more overt, and there was a greater reliance on visual than verbal sex in 1984 than 1964. The study also found that female models are more likely to be portrayed as sexually clad, partially clad, or nude than were male models. The study was then updated by Tom Reichart and Courtney Carpenter to compare the sexual nature of advertisements from 1983 to 2003. The findings indicate overall increases in sexual dress and intimate contact from 1983 to 2003, and that female models were more explicitly dressed in 2003, 49%, than 1993, 40%. In addition, sexual content continued to be more explicit and prevalent in women's and men's magazines compared to news weeklies. In 2003, for instance, 78% of women in ads in men's magazines were sexually attired. Since then, there has been an even bigger leap for the amount of sexual expression used in advertisements. In modern times, you can find sexual imagery and sexual nuance everywhere you look. This is because advertisers have found that sex indeed does sell. In regards to the Darwinian theory, sex sells because humans have an inherent desire to reproduce. Seeing sexual imagery leads our animalistic brain to believe a chance to reproduce has just presented itself, getting our body to fire up and take notice of the advert. An example of sex being used in an advertisement is this ad by Adidas for men's shoes. It implies that women will want to drop their underwear when they notice you're wearing these shoes. This ad attacks one's self-esteem as it causes them to want the shoes to be deemed attractive or aesthetically pleasing to women, and also lights up their urge for a potential mate. Here is another advertisement example for a woman's perfume. I'm sure you've noticed, however, this ad doesn't appear to focus directly on sex. Simply by having someone deemed conventionally attractive, in this case Blake Lively, does subtly have sexual undertones. It targets a woman's desire to be attractive, but it also makes men take notice and want to buy this perfume for their significant other. Now, what makes someone conventionally attractive or aesthetically pleasing? Alison Stevens writes, researchers have begun turning up some answers, such as symmetry. Faces that we deem attractive tend to be symmetrical, they find. Attractive faces also are average. This can be directly seen when looking at a variety of different models in different advertisements. They all share similar qualities ranging from a strong jawline to a small nose, for example. It is interesting to look at the difference between sexual advertising for men and women. Male adverts tend to focus more on sex and objectification than that of women's ads. Simon Davis states that, more specifically, it has been found that men tend to emphasize sexuality and physical attractiveness in a mate to a greater extent than women. The relatively greater preoccupation with casual sexual encounters demonstrated by men may be accounted for by the greater emotional investment that women place in sex. Now, this isn't to say that all men care about is sex, but if the Darwinian theory is to be believed, it's nature's way that the alpha male would be the one to mate with the females. Is the practice of using sexual imagery or nuances good or bad? Personally, I think that it is bad. However, what I think doesn't matter in the end. This is due to advertising companies seeing the statistics their sexualized ads bring in. Tom Reichart, professor and head of the Department of Advertising and Public Relations in the UGA Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication, said, in almost every study I've seen, sexual content gives a purchase advantage. This furthers the assumption that sexualized ads are going to continue into the future. Studies have been done to see if sexual content in advertisements actually had any impact. One study in 2007, conducted by Ellie Parker and Adrian Furnham, was this. Participants aged between 18 and 31 were placed in one of the four conditions and were shown either Sex and the City, a sexual program, or Malcolm in the Middle, a non-sexual program, with sexual or non-sexual advertisements embedded in each. Participants were then asked to recall advertisement details from the advertisements. The results indicated that there was a main effect of program type, demonstrating that sexual program content hindered recall of advertisements. However, there was no main effect of the type of advertisement seen, sexual or non-sexual, on recall, nor was there a negative effect on recall when program and advertisement content were congruous. An interaction between advertisements and sex of participants showed that males recalled sexual advertisements better and females recalled non-sexual advertisements better. Another study was done to see if different people in different areas of the world reacted to sexualized ads differently. This study by Fang Liu, Hong Cheng, and Jianyou Li compared the reactions between focus groups consisting of Australian, Chinese, and US citizens. The results found that Australian, Chinese, and US consumers have significantly different attitudes when exposed to the same ad. However, consumer buying intentions towards the advertised brand are not significantly different. Despite the general assumption that Chinese consumers might react least favorably to sex appeal ads, this paper finds that they hold similar attitudes towards sex appeal ads as US consumers, and even more favorable attitudes than Australian consumers. A more simplistic example of whether sexual advertising works can be seen in a very popular streaming platform, YouTube. Clickbait infests the site, and more often than not, it is the sexual clickbait that grants the publisher more views, equating to increased profit. That's if the content doesn't get demonetized, as recently YouTube has noticed the trend of sexualized clickbait and is actively trying to censor it. Jesse Marksick states, it's fairly common for video thumbnails to feature people or body parts in various stages of undress. Not much will pull eyes towards a video like the promise of sex. So, even if sexualization in advertisements doesn't directly increase the amount of sales, it does increase the number of eyes on the product and the chance of people remembering the advert. Whether or not the Darwinist theory is correct, or whether the beauty of sex is something that society has cooked up itself, There is no question that sex gets people excited and increases the chance of product consumption. It just goes to show that after all, sex does sell.